first time I ever saw a Woody was in Hawaii on the Poly. And we used to go up there quite often just because we were good tourists when we lived there. And we were standing there and an old Buick pulled in, and I asked my father, "What is that?" And he said, "It's a station wagon. They make them out of wood." I said, "Why would they do that?" And he said, "Because they've got it. It's a natural resource that grows, and they're phasing them out, but there are still a lot of wooden-bodied cars around." And I always remembered that. And then when I went back to California, there was a whole lot more of them there in use in the early 1960s.
We do a really long trip up to Santa Cruz. That's really fun. We take Highway 1 all the way up, and there's usually 5, 6, 7 Woodies that go up the coast and stop at the wine country. And we take 3 or 4 days before we get to the show up in Santa Cruz, and that's a really special spot for me.
When we go to the meets, it's really about the people. I have met so many good, laid-back people. When I drive my car there, I park it, and I just get to hang out with my friends. It's like family in more ways than one.
I got my first Woody when I was either 18 or 19. It was given to me. It was a 39 Deluxe. Problem was it didn't have any motor or tranny in it, and I was making about $1.25 an hour. So that one had to go away. I never did get it rented. I was born in Tustin, California, Southern California. You know, my mom was a beach person, so it's probably started going to the beach when I was still in diapers. My second car was my first street ride. That was a 35 pickup. I drove it out to Arizona. When I moved out, that's when I drove out here. The wood on this car was falling off when we brought it home. Wooden car, did all the wood on it. It was probably about a 2-year process. Susan, my wife, really wanted a Woody, and she's a dental hygienist, and they only work like 3 days a week, so she took a second job to help pay for the wood on this car, which is pretty impressive. It's a 37 Ford Woody, of course, and it's got the stock chassis under it with the 8-inch Ford rear end, Mustang front end, Ramjet crate motor in it. It's probably 350, 400 horse. Got 700 R4 tranny for overdrive, so it gets pretty good mileage. This thing will cruise 75, 80 all day long. It's really comfortable and fun. We take the car out quite a bit. We usually put at least 1,000 miles a year on it, and I've been driving it now for 9, almost 10 years.
The surf culture with the wooden cars is kind of a cool thing, just because back in the day, so to speak, the surfers kind of kept the whole thing going, because the estate wagons, what they used to be called, only the rich people owned them, but they're very high maintenance, and once the wood started rotting or falling apart, they would just get rid of them. Well, back in the day, you could buy a Woody for $50, $75, $100, but you didn't really care what they looked like, because you just throw your board in there, a mattress, and some bamboo curtains, and it was like your hotel room. You know, and just a way to get to the beach. But that whole thing has changed now.
I was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1949. At age 4, we moved to California. And I went to 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th high school, and 1 year at Cal State Fullerton. And that was in 1968. Drove myself to NAU on a scholarship. And after I graduated from NAU, I student taught at Cortez High School in Phoenix. And got a job while I was student teaching at Washington High School, teaching what they called decelerated English, and thought I'd stay a year and then transfer to California to Newport Harbor High School, be the surf coach and English teacher. That was always my goal. And I got involved in sports, and I said, I'm going to do 1 more year, and stayed another year, and thought about it, and stayed another year, and thought about it, and stayed another year, and wound up teaching in the Glendale Union High School District for 38 years. In 1980, I bought a 1930 Ford from the Beet Sugar Factory in Glendale, 51st Avenue in Glendale, and it was in there, and they had used it in the fields for years and just parked it in the basement. So I was able to buy that car in 1980 for $2,200, and then complete restore it. It was the only totally restored car that I ever did. Well, there's nothing easy about restoring a Model A, I want to tell you that right now. Took 5 years to do the chassis. The wood that was on the car was a bit of a mess. It was usable, but it wasn't beautiful. So I took the wood apart, hung it on the wall, and I had read an article about a guy who lived in New York who was a woody builder back in the 30s and the 40s. And he wrote an article about working at Iron Mountain and building these woody wagons. And he had the blueprints for the Model A Ford wagon. So I got in contact with this guy and asked him if he was still building woody wood for Model A's. And he said, no. He says, matter of fact, I'm not doing that anymore. He says, I'm 92 years old and I'm too old and I'm infirm, is what he said. And it was about maybe 4 or 5 months later that this gentleman called me back. And he said, I'm willing to do one more. So 4 or 5 months later, he called me and he said, I have all your pieces cut. He told me that the wood was still green, still wet, that I have to leave it in my garage for at least 2 years before I could finish it. That would be sand it, varnish it, sand it, varnish it, sand it, varnish it. And so, sure enough, a great big crate showed up on my doorstep, and I opened it up and I left those pieces to dry. Talked to the guy, told him I got the wood, and he said, that's really good. He said, all I ask of you is when you put it together that you send me a couple of pictures, because I have pictures of all these cars that I've made wood for on my walls. I said, I'd love to do that. I have a very good friend in Encinitas, California named Ron Hayden. Probably the greatest woody woodworker there is. And over the course of the next 6 weeks, I went over there a couple of times on the weekends to help him. And he called me up and said, the wood's all on, we're ready to go. So I brought a trailer over to Encinitas, California, pulled the car up on the trailer, towed it back to Arizona. So I have a finished chassis with the engine, the wood done on the car, pulled it into the garage. It was a great day. But you'd think you'd be finished then. No, it took me probably 4 or 5 more years to get all the pieces and all the wiring harnesses and everything that I needed to put back on that car. There's nothing easy about restoring any car. There is really nothing easy about restoring wood. Anyway, so when I got the car together, I called the gentleman in New York. Nobody answered. I called again. And a young man answered, and he said, well, unfortunately, my father passed away a couple years ago. And I said, really? He said, I was supposed to send some pictures to him. He said, you're not Craig Johnson, are you? And I said, yes, I am. He said, that was the last car my father ever touched. And you know what? He had cancer, and he got up every morning just so he could work on your car. That's why he got up. And if it wasn't for that, he wouldn't have lived as long as he did. And what do you say to that? And he said, if you ever go to sell that car, he says, I want to buy it for my family. And I said, when I go to sell this car, I will sell it to you. So I had a guy that built woody wood at the Ford factory in Michigan, Upper Peninsula, Michigan, build the wood for my car. Unseen, there were 3 errors. He misplaced 6 holes by a ½ an inch that had to be plugged and re-drilled. Other than that, everything went together perfectly. It's still beautiful today. And what a great part of history that car is because of that.
I was born in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. My dad moved here, the family moved here in 1952. I went to St. Gregory's Grade School, West High School, graduated from high school, went to Phoenix College, and was drafted in 1966. In 1967 through 68, I went to Vietnam. I tried to get on the fire department in 1969. It was just something I've always wanted to do all my life. And that was 30 years I was on the fire department. And I enjoyed every day of it, and it may kind of sound kind of hokey, but I'd have done what I did for nothing. It was very fulfilling for me. You know, when you came home, man, you feel really that, man, I did some good today. I have a 46 Mercury. I put a 350 Chevy in it, has a $700 automatic, tilt wheel, air conditioning, Mustang 2 front suspension, 9-inch Ford rear end. It's like a Cadillac. If we wanted to go to New York, let's go, you know, at 75, 80 miles an hour. And my sons said, hey, Pops, you can't go to the coast without any tunes. So they built me this killer stereo system that's in it too. So listen to the Beach Boys and Dick Dale all the way there, you know. So, and I drive it to California all the time. It's not like a picture you hang on the wall and just look at it. I have had so much fun with that car. You know, it's a very special car. It has all the original wood. I have a teardrop trailer that I made. It matches my car. It sleeps too. And when I have it fully loaded, it has a stereo system in it, and I have a little DVD player I can put in it. When I drive my car to California, people will be on the side of me for miles and miles. You know, not everybody has their phone camera. They're taking pictures. They honk their horns. I'll pass a semi, boop, boop, and they honk their horns. It's making people happy. You know, you just forget about everything because there's just something about the Woody car. I mean, I could drive by in my Yukon and know, oh, there goes another Yukon. You drive by in a Woody going, whoa, man, look at that car, you know? So there's something very, very special.
Wood is organic, like we're organic. I think that's part of the reason why I like them. They creak and they breathe and they talk and they're living things. That's why I think I fell in love with them. There are probably estimated maybe 15,000 Woodies of any kind in the whole wide world. That would be hulks and junkyards to the most finely restored cars in the world.
I was going to put my wooden coffin in my wooden car. And the kids go, no, you're not, Pops. That car's worth too much money. And that being said, that's part of the problem with trying to keep it going because the cars are worth so much money. Sadly, I don't know what will happen to the cars if someone doesn't take them over. Because even with some of the families, I'm not sure if their kids even want the cars. You know.
We used to play hide and seek in the front yard in Garden Grove, and about 4 doors down there was a guy who had an old Woody wagon. It was a Plymouth next to his garage, parked, you know, in the weeds and dilapidated. And every time I hid in the Woody wagon. I went, wow, this is like being in a jungle hut, you know, and all the wood on the inside. And maybe a year later, I was probably 14. He pulled it onto the street so he could whack the weeds. The city got after him or something. And now the street cleaner's making a nice track around his car, you know, and pretty soon it's gone. And I didn't think much of it, you know, just a little bit of your past is gone, nowhere to hide anymore. And the guy was out front one day and I said, what happened to your Woody? And he said, oh, the police impounded it. I said, those dirty dogs, they took your Woody? He said, yes. He says, do you want it? I said, do I want it? Heck yeah, I want it. He said, well, you pay the $25 impound fee and you can have it. Now, we were south of Laguna Beach, north of Laguna Beach, south of the Newport area at a surf spot that you have to walk down switchbacks. It has a name, but so you park on this cliff and then you walk down with your board and you surf and you walk back up. Now, this is before school in the morning, probably 15 miles away from school. And so we're halfway down the switchbacks, and I hear the screech, crack, bang, bang, bang. And I turned around and I looked up, and here comes the Woody. Did one full revolution and just smash on the beach. Just smash. And I said, well, did you put the rock under the tire? Said, yeah, I put the rock under the tire. Well, evidently somebody removed the rock and pushed the car. Okay, so over the cliff it went. And so we hitchhiked to school, did the sport, went home, and my dad was standing in the driveway with two policemen with their hands on their hips. Where's the Woody? Well, we were at the beach this morning and someone pushed it off the cliff and it's on the middle of the beach right now in a million pieces and there's no access. And they said, the cop said, well, you got about 36 hours to get it out of there before we give you a ticket. So my dad brought out two, 25-gallon acetylene gas tanks. And he says, here it is. Take it down there, cut it up, tote it out, and you have 24 hours, not 36. So we did. We went down there and we cut that car up into little tiny pieces and wheelbarrowed it back up the switchbacks and put it in everybody's garbage can and alley and dumpster. And all that was left was an old pile of wood. And we saved that for last. And I said, okay, guys, all we got to do is get this wood out of here and we'll be okay. And they said, we ain't carrying this wood out of here. I said, here we go again. I'm going to be dead. And they said, we're going to burn it to the surf gods. I got goosebumps every time I tell that part. Anyway, so we did. Torched the wood at sunset, drew a crowd of people, or probably 25 people, and all of a sudden it's, hey, yay, 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 around the fire, hey, yay, surf, 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 surf. And around as the sun was going down and all these embers going up to the surf gods, and all you have left is charcoal, and we spread it into the sand and went home, and it was the best afternoon of my life.